How can God pour out his wrath on Israel 2,000 years after those who rejected the Messiah have already died? And so the question is, how can God pour out his wrath for rejecting the Messiah 2,000 years after the folks that participated in that already died? And so what I'm going to suggest to you is this. With respect to God pouring out his wrath, there are two aspects to that. There is the individual aspect, and there is the national aspect. So let's talk about the individual first. With regard to an individual, where and at what point does God pour out his wrath upon them? And the answer to that is the great white throne judgment. So get with me, Revelation 20, verse 11. Now, while you're turning there, let me ask you this question. Are the wicked punished in this life for their evil deeds? And the answer is maybe a little, but they're not always punished, and they're not sufficiently punished, right? They don't receive the full punishment for their sins in this life. Revelation 20, verse 11. And I saw a great white throne, and him that sat on it, from whose face the earth and the heaven fled away, and there was found no place for them. And I saw the dead, small and great, stand before God, and the books, plural, were opened. And another book was opened, which is the book of life, and the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books according to their works. So at the great white throne judgment, there are books, plural, that are opened, and what do those books contain? They contain the work of the lost. Have any of you ever maintained a diary where you write down what you did today? I did that for a little bit, and I'm like, this is boring. I'm not doing this. Well, I have news that may be bad news, and the news is this. Does every lost person have a full and complete account of their life? There is one. You know where it's kept? It's going to be revealed at the great white throne. So even if a lost man forgets everything he did, if he has amnesia, Alzheimer's, whatever, mental lack of capacity he has, is there going to be a book or books that are an accurate recording of everything he ever did? There is. And it's going to be judged according to that. Verse 13. And the sea gave up the dead which were in it, and death and hell delivered up the dead which were in them, and they were judged every man according to their works. And death and hell were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death. And whosoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. So what happens at the great white throne is each lost person appears. They are judged out of the books, plural, for all of their works. By being judged for all of their works, what happens is their degree of guilt is both proven and the severity of their crimes is established. Will everyone in the lake of fire receive the same punishment? No, because they haven't committed the same amount of sins. So at the great white throne, what happens is their guilt is demonstrated. Here's all the sins committed. Here's how serious they were. And when they're cast into the lake of fire, they then receive, and by the way, when you cast something, you don't care about it, right? In other words, you're like chucking it is what's happening. They're cast into the lake of fire, and they will receive the exact proportionate amount of wrath that their works deserve. So the first part of God's wrath is the individual aspect that people receive when the great white throne judgment occurs and they're cast into the lake of fire. There is something separate and distinct from that, and what that is God pours out earthly wrath on Israel for its collective historical sins. In other words, there's going to be a time on the earth when God pours out on Israel the collective wrath that has been earned for its sins. Now, that punishment is poured out on a particular generation, even though such generation did not actually commit all of the sins for which the punishment is imposed. So let's look at this. You ready? Matthew 23:34. Matthew chapter 23, verse 34. So what I'm saying here is that there's going to be an earthly punishment that is imposed on Israel, and it will be the particular generation that is alive at that time. And it is going to experience the wrath for the collective sins that Israel has previously committed. Look at Matthew 23:34. Wherefore, behold, I send unto you prophets and wise men and scribes, and some of them ye shall kill and crucify, and some of them shall ye scourge in your synagogues and persecute them from city to city. Now notice this, that upon you may come all the righteous blood shed upon the earth, from the blood of righteous Abel unto the blood of Zacharias, son of Barachias, whom ye slew between the temple and the altar. Verse 36, verily I say unto you, all these things shall come upon this generation. So just think about this for a minute. When Abel was slain, and then think about when Abel was slain, and then Jeremiah and Isaiah and so on. The people that were doing that are not the same people, right? Obviously, they're living at different points in time. So it's not the same people that are doing that. But if you notice what the verse is saying, that upon you may come all the righteous blood shed upon the earth, from the blood of righteous Abel unto the blood of Zacharias. That's a significant period of time. But it's all coming upon what the Lord calls this generation. Look with me at Luke 11, verse 50. Luke chapter 11, and we'll look at verse 50. That the blood of all the prophets, which was shed from the foundation of the world, may be required of this generation, from the blood of Abel unto the blood of Zacharias, which perished between the altar and the temple. Verily I say unto you, it shall be required of this generation. So you see there's two things going on there. That there's the wrath that of all the righteous that are slain, that God brings upon this generation, that there's an earthly punishment that occurs. And then separate from that, there is the individual punishment that occurs at the great white throne judgment.